Hey everyone, welcome back to StoryVoyage. Today we have a chilling story that takes betrayal and revenge to a whole new level. Brace yourself because this tale is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. I don't know why I'm writing this. Part of me wants validation, I guess, or maybe I'm just trying to process the wreckage I've created. Whatever the reason, this is the mess I'm in. My husband, Max, and I had been together for 6 years, married for 2. From the outside, we were perfect, the kind of couple people thought had it all figured out. But inside, we were struggling. Max is the kind of person who puts 150% into everything, especially his job, and I was left alone in the shadows. And as much as I hate to admit it, that loneliness ate at me. We both wanted a family, but it felt like that goal was always just out of reach, pushed aside by his endless work hours and my simmering resentment. A few months ago, I crossed a line I never imagined I'd cross. A new guy, Liam, started working in my department, and he was a breath of fresh air in a life that had felt stagnant for too long. He noticed me, asked about my day, and cared about the little things Max seemed too busy to care about. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, Liam and I had fallen into a whirlwind affair. I felt alive and free with him. It was intoxicating. But the moment I saw the positive pregnancy test, my world flipped. Max and I had been trying for a year with no success, so part of me wanted to believe it was his. But deep down, I knew I just knew. I didn't tell Liam, and I couldn't bring myself to tell Max. The guilt gnawed at me every single day. I knew that whatever I did would have consequences, but I kept my mouth shut, hoping somehow it would all just work out. Everything crashed down when Max found out. I still don't know how he did. Maybe he saw messages, or maybe I was just terrible at hiding it. One evening, he confronted me in our living room. He asked me, "Who's the father?" His voice was ice, and I froze. I tried to deny it, to claim the baby was his, but Max just laughed, a cold, hollow sound that I didn't recognize. He had this look in his eyes that scared me. Max was always the stable, predictable one, and suddenly he looked like someone I didn't know. In that moment, he was a stranger, and I felt like the prey cornered by a predator. He didn't yell or scream, just stared me down with this intensity I hadn't seen in him before. He asked me again, "Is it mine?" I knew I couldn't lie anymore, so I just shook my head, tears streaming down my face. From that point on, Max changed. Every trace of warmth and kindness he'd ever shown me vanished. I felt like I was living with a ghost, a cold, distant figure who was there, but entirely unreachable. He didn't leave, didn't tell me he wanted a divorce. He just stayed, watching me with those same piercing eyes. It was like he had some master plan that I was too terrified to even ask about. One night, he told me he wanted to start fresh. He suggested we move out of the city to a remote cabin he'd inherited from his grandfather. The idea made my stomach churn, but I didn't dare say no. Part of me hoped that this was his way of giving us a second chance. Maybe he was trying to forgive me, to figure things out far away from everyone else. When we got there, though, it only got worse. Max was cold, distant, and unrecognizable. I tried to talk to him, to make amends, but he just watched me with those unblinking eyes. Days turned into weeks, and I began to feel like I was the only living soul out there. No phone service, no internet, just me, Max, and the guilt that felt like it was consuming me alive. Then, one evening, he sat across from me at the dinner table and said something I'll never forget. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're going to have that baby here, with me, and no one else will ever know." His tone was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it sent chills down my spine. I realized then that he didn't just want revenge, he wanted me trapped, isolated, away from everyone. In his mind, this was justice, and he was willing to do anything to make me suffer. I started planning my escape that night. The forest was dense, and it would take hours to find the nearest road, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I waited until Max went to bed and slipped out the door, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he'd hear it. I never looked back. That night, I ran until I couldn't feel my legs, stumbling through the darkness until I found a family willing to help me. I made up a story, told them I was lost, and they drove me to the nearest town. Max hasn't reached out since. I don't know if he ever will. And honestly, the thought terrifies me. Thanks for tuning in to StoryVoyage. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more gripping tales, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, we'll see you on the next journey.